Hi everyone, so today I'm going to talk about Microsoft Killer Part 2, but why? So I decided to call it Byte Why because I'm not exactly sure how I would title this presentation, and I'm not exactly sure the direction I'm taking. So everything will be made clear in the next few points. So last week, in my first video, what did we actually try? We tried fly spell, try, highlight, that was a custom function, and Hydra. So just to recap, fly spell is just some spell checking stuff, and try is a very convenient way, especially if you're a beginner. You want to try some new packages without installing it. So try is very useful. It actually installs it in some temporary folder, and it works both in Windows and Linux, just in case you'd like to know. So try is a very safe way to actually try a package without installing. So the next time you restart your Emacs, you won't have that package anymore. And the highlight is my clever trick custom function. I might explain it in another video, but I think it's kind of useful to actually explore that function. It's actually a useful way to actually highlight a word without relying on autocomplete, and they kind of serve the same function, because to me it's all about improving readability. Maybe it's not the same thing, but I think sometimes what I like to do when I code is actually I remove autocomplete. If I want to focus on just reading the code, I actually rely on highlight, just to highlight a variable name. Then Hydra is our very powerful kind of like leader key thing. You can achieve the same thing in Vim or SpaceMax or Doom Emacs, and usually they use spacebar. And I recommend exploring Hydra because that means you can actually rebind it to something a bit different, like semicolon, which I do. And so that means my spacebar is not the leader key. So why am I doing this? First of all, I want my viewers to see what is possible. And next, mostly for self-documentation. Maybe for those who want to transition away from SpaceMac and Doom Emacs into vanilla Emacs. Maybe for those who want to blur the line between being a writer and a programmer. I mean, not the best way to rephrase it. What I mean is a faster context switching, or maybe a kind of unified environment where you'd like the moment you have an idea, you can actually save. Maybe the moment you have an idea, you can immediately access a note to write it down so that you don't forget some idea you found out later. Or maybe you're documenting your code, not just for someone else, but also for yourself, your growth as you learn a new language, for example. So you'd like to document that in a separate diary, for example. This is not going to be a tutorial, and if you're looking for a tutorial, I'm gonna have some recommendations later, much better resources, 10 times better, many times better than me. And I'm hoping this video is mostly an inspiration, maybe what is possible and how do you look about, or how you hunt about for information. Because you can actually, if you're using I, that's fine, but maybe if you want to go the old route and you want to explore blogs, I still believe in blogs personally, and I think there's when you have some context information, like someone writing a blog but why they use a certain thing, I like to read those kind of stuff, and it's a good way to go into the mind of another Emacs user, how he comes up with an idea, for example. So first I'm going to show you a cool trick. So I'm going to go to this one, and I'm going to explore down here, and right now I have this mode enabled called abbrev-mode, right? Sorry, abbrev-mode. So right now it's enabled. So when I enable it, whenever I type something like for example, I wanted to type it becomes, I accidentally type it as TEH, it becomes the. So it can be about something else, for example this one. Okay, so right now, for now, there's only this is the only one that is defined right now. And I'm gonna show you how I achieve that, which is this relates to my previous video that I talked about how there's very little boundary in Emacs between data, code, buffers, and windows, and I'm gonna show how you can actually achieve that, and why that relates to Emacs's almost lack of boundary. So it's kind of messy, and it's kind of, I think it's beautiful in a strange way. So some previous comments on my first video. So when I posted my first video, there were some very useful and helpful Reddit comments, but also some of them I'm going to choose to ignore because I'm doing this also as a self-documentation, so I'm not entirely sure what type of audience is going to tune into. If I can inspire a few people, to me that is good enough. So some of the comments on my first video, one of the first comment showed how I jumped right straight into Elisp, which could scare viewers. So I'm going to choose to partly ignore this one because what I'm going to do in the second video is I'm going to do some spell checking, and I'm going to show a package way to do it and also a more built-in way to do it. So I'm going to show several ways to do it, mostly to give an idea as if you want to jump straight into it, it's possible, maybe not a good idea. But also I want to encourage maybe someone who is using Doom Emacs or Space Macs, they should try jumping straight into vanilla Emacs. You would learn a lot about Elisp. Okay, so a second comment that I found was I should be showing a full-blown result of Emacs working like a full-blown word processor. I'm also going to partly ignore this one because again I'm not exactly sure the direction I'm heading with this video. Maybe I'm going to try to move towards making Emacs behave a little bit like Microsoft Word, but not really. More like a unified environment that really merges the boundary between programming and writing. So it's not going to be a clone of Microsoft Word. It's going to be something a bit more cooler and interesting. The third comment was another comment says how I should show the advantage of customizing Emacs instead of customizing Microsoft Word using Visual Basic. So I may do that in the next video. And what this comment was referring to is like a more portable modification, or because you're doing all your modification in theoretically you could do it in a single file, in a single Lisp file. It however long, 1,000 lines, 2,000 lines, and you could. It doesn't take much effort to actually move that all your preferred Emacs behavior to a different environment in Windows, for example. And you can even achieve some cool tricks, for example, in using conditional. So maybe I'll show it very quickly, and because I'm going to show it in the next video, another video of what I did, but I'm going to show it very quickly here. So one of the tricks I use is actually using conditionals. So here's an example. Using conditional, I can actually load certain files, certain configuration files, usually in a separate folder based on some conditional. In this case, the conditional is Emacs major version. So it could be something a bit more different, maybe the operating system you use. So Emacs has awareness of your operating system, whether it's Windows or Linux. So you can use cool tricks like this to actually load your conditional. So conditionally load your configuration. So you can achieve some amazing portability with Elisp. So I might do that in a different video. And the next one is another Emacs user I met on Zoom commented how I'm wasting my time, especially against videos like SystemCrafters. So again, I'm gonna show you much better resources if you plan on learning Emacs from a beginner. So there's much better written resources. So this is not the aim. So the first comment mentioned this very cool article, and I'm going to link that article in the description. And this is the link. This is the article, and it's by Neil Stevenson. So you should be reading this. I don't know who this is actually, but I read this and I found some pretty interesting stuff. I think most of this stuff I've read somewhere, but I decided to include it in this video just to give an idea of how I'm going to shape my videos, my series in Emacs. So why do we use GI? Computers are much more powerful than most people realize. Modern software are multiple layers of abstraction. That includes your fat and sluggish Microsoft Word. Abstraction in this sense isn't just a programming language of choice. It is the various layers of metaphors built on many abstractions of the past, and that layer includes the font you choose and QWERTY keyboard you type on. So that means this is just a fancy, it's my own summarization of this article. It's my way of saying that we don't understand actually how computers came to be what it is today. And basically they're all just abstraction. And when you talk to programmers and the fascination with the efficiency and power of command line apps, the arguments are mostly convincing, but it's easy to get lost and forget that GUIs and mouses are not evil. They are meant to be altruistic, to let the average user access the power of the computer. So while the GUI itself is not evil, it's a tool, it has a lot of problems. The existing GUI is an abstraction of accessibility. It's a tool that has many flaws, but it works. Now here's the interesting bit that I concluded from this article, in that modern operating systems or software have successfully fooled people into thinking computers are too complex to learn. And if you want to master it, if you want to bring it under your control, for the average mortal, it's actually way too complicated, which is actually not true. And the terminal apps, on the other hand, being simpler tools, they're not really what computers are about, which is also not true, because despite all the gadgets that we have right now with the mouse, underneath it all, there's always some weird, ugly hack, that some terminal app logic going on. So it's not as straightforward as saying that terminal apps are not really what computers are. Sometimes they are the computers themselves. So how does Emacs fit into this? So this is just my summarization of the article. It's not a very good summary. Emacs has had a long history of surviving this tug-of-war between GI and CLI, and between the many ways of doing many things. So it came out on top by being very extensible. And what is extensibility? To me, it's about the quality of being designed to allow the addition of new capabilities or functionality. But Emacs is not Neovim. It's been around for a long time. You could not install any packages. You will not need to install any packages. There was a time where Emacs had no package manager. I think it was version 22. And you could still make Emacs do some crazy tricks. Although there's always some hacky workaround. It usually took quite some time. And why? It's because of Elisp. So Elisp is, on its own, is quite worth learning just for this. And while packages is not, it's not really accurate to say that packages are what makes Emacs works. It's actually the other way around. Emacs is what makes the packages work because of Elisp. So it's worth it to learn Elisp just to achieve this kind of magic. Alright, so if I attempted to explain Elisp, I would sound like a fool. I think I don't remember adding this note, but extensibility is the very DNA of Elisp. How I Elisp my way into that cool trick I achieved at the beginning. So I'm going to show that trick that I showed us now, that check spelling trick, and I'm going to show you how I did it using some pretty plain built-in functions. So we're going to close everything here. We're going to start a new instance. So we're going to start a new Emacs instance, and we're going to explore this blog. I'm going to link to this blog. So this is a pretty cool blog I found. It's called Endless Parenthesis. It's by this guy called Malabarba, and if you explore it, it turns out he has a very cool GitHub. I haven't really explored it, but apparently he's also a pretty big guy. And another guy I would recommend if you want to learn a lot about Elisp and Emacs is also Xah Lee, and some of the tricks I learned to make that trick work is actually from Xah Lee. So first of all, this blog. So I'm going to show this as an inspiration. You, even without installing packages, you can achieve some cool tricks, and we're going to use the snippet here to achieve the point that I showed in the previous video, which is actually that there is no boundary between data and code and buffer and windows, and you can achieve some pretty interesting or even hacky tricks, a bit hacky. So so even myself, I would have trouble reading this entire code. So you actually don't need to understand everything. You can actually, if you get the gist or the logic of it, you can actually achieve some pretty cool tricks already. So we're going to modify or simplify this this code right here, and we're going to achieve the trick that I showed earlier. So we're going to remove some comments here. Now, right now, abbrev, we need to enable our abbrev-mode just to make it easier for us. And we're going to call it, just call it test. Remove some arguments here. So the only thing we need here is to actually the before and after. So for example, if I were to type something like this, I want it to be corrected into this. So I want my function to actually read these two lines, these two words. This will be the after, this will be the before. So we're going to need this one, and mostly these two backward car, mostly to actually go backward, and then get the second, get the first word as one of the data. And the only other thing we need is actually this function define abbrev. But that's the only thing we need so far. So we're going to remove most of this, so we can copy. We can actually, we're gonna move this out. It's not the most beautiful, not the most prettiest way to do this, but we're gonna try it. So that's the only three things we need. So we can actually remove all this. So let is another way of saying that this is define these variables as local. And then we're going to need these two. But we're going to have to test it first. So what we're going to do is that we want to extract the word at point. So we're going to use a very simple function called word at point. So if we look back into our original function, he used something called expel get word. So you really don't need to understand everything. If you understand a few simple functions here or there, you can actually copy some guy's function online, and you can actually do your own stuff. So but we're going to use this function called word at point, and what a word at point does is that it actually gets the word at point. So if you notice, I've evaluated the function, it has nil. That's not very useful, but we're going to try it with this one. So what we're going to do is word at point, and we're going to print it. Sorry, let's try that again. Right, so if I do it correctly, it should show something. So that means I'm correctly getting the text, which is the after, and the before comes after this one. So again, we're going to do the same thing here, and just like that, our function now works properly. So you got most of the gist or logic of it. So we got the after word, and we got the before word. But you notice we're actually getting properties. So if you happen to be exploring a lot of Elisp on your own, this you'll be using this function a lot, which is some string, no properties. It's this one, sorry. So it's this one. So this function you'll be using quite a lot. So what this needs is actually the word at point, any word at point. So we're going to use this one. Okay, we're going to leave the print because we're going to check if it works. So if we do the same thing here, then we probably get our text without the properties. So we know it's working now. So now the text that we have in our buffer becomes the data for the code. And what we want is the abbrev-mode. We are using abbrev-mode as a spell checker. So abbrev-mode is usually used for, if you can guess, it's abbreviations. When you type a short form, you get the long form. So for example, maybe in C++, what you have a tendency to write is something like this. So an example is maybe you're programming in C++, what you have a tendency to write is something like this. So argc and argv. So instead of typing the full thing, you just go void main, and Emacs will complete it for you. So people usually use abbrev like this, but instead we're going to use it as a spell, as an autocorrect. So right now we have we have our function half working, but what we need actually is to put it into before and after. So instead of print q, we're gonna do set q. So that means we're setting after, and also setting before. Now if we run the same function, we can't tell that it works right now, but we can check the variable. So Control HV, check the variable. I'm going to check the oh sorry, I did a mistake. So we're going to add it into our abbrev table, and it's perfectly fine to use global, but as just an example, I'm going to use XX as a table. So instead of this one, I'm going to call it abbrev table. However, the examples online, for example, from this parenthesis, and even Xah Lee, he shows some global abbrev table as an example, which is actually quite safe. And the reason is why it's quite safe is because if you write and program at the same time, most of the time you're not going to be using abbrev mode all the time. You're going to turn it mostly when you're writing, maybe in your org file or a text file. So since you're not turning abbrev mode all the time, you're not going to see some conflicts in naming, for example, accidentally overwriting or adding stuff into your global abbrev table. So, but just for the sake of this example, we're going to use a local abbrev table anyway. So we have this one. So right now this should work correctly. Right now this should work pretty fine. So if we do that again, call our function. Now, okay, so we did something wrong actually. Alright, so we haven't defined after and before properly actually. Oh, okay, so there was misbalanced parentheses, so we're going to try that one more time. And right now, there's no way to check. The only way to check it is to actually check the variable XX abbrev table. So it looks, this is a bit confusing, but the only thing we need, the only indicator we need is this word right here. So you can see function actually works fine. So right now, if everything works correctly, the moment I type abbrev mode, I enable it, it should work fine. It means if I type something, it should autocorrect. But right now it's not working, and the reason why is because I have not set the local abbrev table to this XX abbrev table. So I'm going to go back to Xah Lee's site or blog. So we're going to copy this function and we're going to do this one. So right now it sets to local because this is locally to the buffer. So it's a buffer local variable. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to define this inside a function. So right now, if I'm not mistaken, this should work. And if I call that function again, so as you can see, it works. So right now, if I type if I have a misspelling like this, so this is a very interesting way to actually take advantage of Emacs's lack of boundary that I mentioned before. It's kind of cool. I think it might be a bit hacky for some. So it's just a sample of what you can do in Emacs if you really export Elisp and you ignore package. But let's say you don't like this, or maybe you want to jump in slowly a bit. You want to use a package. So another thing we can use is the Jinx mode. Alright, so we're back, and how about instead of using some custom Elisp functions we wrote ourselves, we're going to use something a bit more simpler, which is a package called Jinx. And we have a lot of such autocorrect packages or spell checking packages, but we're going to use something called Jinx, and it's supposed to be faster, and it uses backends instead. So instead of using some Elisp function that collects text from buffers and that becomes the data for the code, we're going to use a backend tool, which is basically some command line tools, aspell, or actually Hunspell. So a lot of tutorials online on how to install that. So there's some points to note. Some Emacs, there are a few Emacs that seem to struggle with these backends. That includes myself. So actually, but if I were to look at Reddit, they seem to have a lot of compliments. So I'm assuming it's mostly successful, but it's not always reliable, I'm assuming. And another blogger who seems to have problems, at least with Hunspell and not aspell, is actually Xah Lee. So he seems to struggle with Hunspell, although he managed to make aspell work perfectly fine, but he seems to have some problem with Hunspell. And another thing you need to note is that you actually have to make sure you have this variable set. So right now I already have my Jinx installed. I use the try as usual, try, and using try install Jinx, and I have to make sure that the iSpell program name is defined. So right now it's correctly pointing to aspell. Right, so you can try Hunspell if you'd like. You can try Hunspell, but I am going to use aspell. So the command that you use to actually add words to aspell is actually something like this. So one of the struggles that I seem to have is, maybe it comes from my misunderstanding, but whenever I use this commander, it doesn't seem to be enough. I actually have to add it here as well as in Emacs. So I'm not exactly sure how this tool actually works. So first we're going to open an org file. Right, so right now, if you to enable Jinx mode, you can see it correctly highlights or underlines all the misspelled words. So Golang is defined, Golang is fine, and magic is fine. And the reason why is because I have those two words inside my dictionary. So if I were to cat my personal dictionary, so this is a personal dictionary for aspell. So you also have your global dictionary, and your global dictionary, depending on your system probably, but in Ubuntu at least, it's actually underneath user/share/dic/words, and that's your dictionary. So but my personal dictionary, I already have these three words. So Golang, magic, brain fudge, even though they're not actual English words, they are considered correct. Right, so what if I want to add another word? Say for example, I want to add Zig. So that's a programming language, but it's considered a misspelling, so I want to add that one. So the first thing I would do is I would use this command, but I would have to make sure I add that into I add my new word into the text file. So I'm going to add Zig. Now this command by default, what it does, it actually it checks the text file it checks this text file for you, but that's not our goal right now. We're not interested in checking the spellings of this word. We are using this file to add words to the dictionary because we're using this as a backend for our Emacs. So we're going to use A as a way, we're going to use the key A to add words to the dictionary. So if I were to type, it's highlighting zig as a misspelling, so I'm going to press A, and that's going to add it to my dictionary. But for some strange reason, it doesn't seem enough. So if I were to quit this and I were to reopen that same org file, and if I were to enable Jinx mode again, it doesn't seem to work, which means I still have to Jinx correct, and have to make sure I select zig. So now actually Emacs will actually register. So even if I were to restart, it would still be considered a correct word, sorry. Alright, so before I end this video, I'm just gonna recommend a few online resources that are much better for beginners, because if you really want to learn Elisp, I recommend a lot of stuff from Xah Lee. He's very good, but he's actually quite opinionated. So, but his resources are very good. They're very simple compared to some other sources you'll see on YouTube or blogs. It's actually his resources are quite simple. So I recommend this guy. You can try SystemCrafters, but at this point in time, his YouTube videos are like far ahead. He seems to be exploring a lot of other stuff, not just Emacs, but also in Geeks, which is it's an operating system that is declarative. It's a stateless operating system. That's one way to describe it. Geeks, if you've not heard of it. And he seems to be exploring a lot of stuff that is in the realm of Lisp or related to Emacs, or maybe Emacs adjacent, something like Geeks, which uses another functional language. And he seems to be exploring a lot of other stuff. So, but his stuff is great because if you want to learn a lot of cool tricks in Emacs, I would recommend him. Sacha Chua, if you're already at the deep end and you'd like to look for cool tricks, not necessarily something that you can solve easily with packages, you can try Sacha Chua, and you can also try MasteringEmacs. Very good. I actually referred to his online article when I wanted to compile my own Emacs, or as well as install some grammars for my Elisp. For my tree sitter. That's it for my presentation, and if you liked the video and want to support my channel, please consider a tip on PayPal or buying a coffee on my coffee link. Links are all in the description, and that includes the links on the articles that I mentioned and some of the other stuff I mentioned. They're in the description below. That's it for today, and thanks for watching. Bye.